There are rooms in Washington where the curtains are always drawn. In these quiet spaces, decisions are made that will never reach the public ear. They are whispered into existence, carried out in shadows, and then buried under layers of classification. This is the world of intelligence. It is a world built on secrets. The Central Intelligence Agency was forged in the fires of a new global conflict, the Cold War. Its stated purpose was simple: to protect American interests, to know what the enemy was thinking. But what happens when the pursuit of knowledge turns inward? What happens when the tools of espionage are used not on a foreign adversary, but on the world itself, and on its own citizens? We believe we live in a world of our own making. We choose our leaders. We form our own opinions. We trust the information we read and see. But this belief rests on a fragile assumption. For decades, stories have trickled out from behind the official narrative. They were dismissed as conspiracy, as fantasy, but sometimes the truth is far stranger and more disturbing than any fiction. Leaked documents, declassified files, brave testimony of whistleblowers. They have revealed a history hidden in plain sight. A history of power wielded in absolute secrecy. These are not tales of spies in trench coats exchanging briefcases in a foggy park. The reality is more complex and infinitely more unsettling. This is a story of psychological manipulation on a massive scale. It is a story of how the news you read was shaped by intelligence operatives. It is a story of how a democratically elected government was overthrown for the sake of oil and influence. These operations were not rogue actions. They were meticulously planned, authorized at the highest levels, and executed with chilling precision. They were designed to alter the course of history, and they succeeded. The world we inhabit today was, in many ways, sculpted by their efforts. We will now step through the looking glass. We will journey into the heart of the CIA's darkest secrets. We will examine 3 operations, each a universe of intrigue unto itself. Project MKUltra, the search for mind control. Operation Mockingbird, manipulation of the free press. 1953, Iran coup, a blueprint for modern intervention. The facts of these events are now a matter of public record, confirmed by the very government that once denied their existence. They serve as a stark reminder. A reminder that power, when unchecked, operates by its own rules. And its first rule is silence. Imagine a weapon that requires no army. A weapon that could make a person do anything, say anything, believe anything. This was the terrifying holy grail sought by the CIA during the height of the Cold War. The agency was haunted by a fear. They believed their communist adversaries had discovered the secrets of mind control. They saw American prisoners of war in Korea giving coerced confessions and were convinced that a brainwashing gap had opened. To close this gap, they decided they must not only catch up, they must surpass their enemies. They had to become the masters of the human mind. This fear gave birth to Project MKUltra. Officially sanctioned in 1953, its mandate was chillingly broad. It was to investigate chemical, biological, radiological materials for clandestine control of human behavior. There were no ethical lines that could not be crossed. The project's director, Sidney Gottlieb, was given a blank check and a license to explore psychological warfare. The human mind became the battlefield. Test subjects were often unaware they were part of an experiment. They cast a wide net, looking for a key to unlock the mind. They tested many methods: hypnosis, sensory deprivation, electroshock therapy, psychological abuse. Their primary focus was drugs, specifically lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD. The CIA became a major early purchaser of the hallucinogen. They believed it could break down a person's ego, leaving the mind open to suggestion. They imagined programmable assassins or forced extraction of secrets. The potential, limitless. The danger, the same. The experiments left labs and spilled into public life. Operatives used front organizations and shell companies and set up safe houses in New York and San Francisco. They lured unsuspecting, often marginalized people, drug addicts, sex workers, and dosed them with LSD. They watched through two-way mirrors, taking notes as subjects' minds unraveled. This was not science. It was a dark, unethical violation, a secret war on free will, hidden from the American people and the world. The genesis of MKUltra can be traced back to the end of World War II. As the Allied forces swept through Germany, they captured not only territory but also Nazi scientists. Under a program called Operation Paperclip, the United States secretly brought hundreds of these scientists to America. Many had been involved in horrific human experiments in concentration camps. Their knowledge, however, was deemed too valuable to ignore. These German researchers brought with them a dark expertise in interrogation and behavior modification. Their work provided a grim foundation upon which the CIA would build its own mind control program. The darkness of the past was being imported to shape the future. He was convinced that the human mind could be deconstructed and then rebuilt. He personally oversaw the most extreme experiments. He authorized the use of LSD on unwitting American citizens. He traveled the world in search of exotic toxins and natural poisons that could be weaponized. His quest was singular: to find a way to completely control another human being. The scope of the project was vast and compartmentalized. It involved more than 80 institutions across the United States and Canada. Universities, hospitals, prisons. Grants were funneled through front foundations to respected academics who had no idea their work was being funded by the intelligence community. They conducted studies on hypnosis, memory, behavior, and their findings were secretly sent back to the CIA. This structure was designed to provide plausible deniability. If any single experiment was exposed, the agency could claim it was the work of a rogue researcher, cutting it loose to protect the core program. One of the most infamous sub-projects involved the death of a man named Frank Olson. Olson was a U.S. Army biochemist working with the CIA. In 1953, he attended a retreat with several of his colleagues, including Sidney Gottlieb's deputy. There, his drink was secretly laced with LSD. Olson, who had a history of depression, became severely paranoid and agitated. 9 days later, he fell to his death from the window of his 10th floor New York hotel room. For years, his family was told it was a suicide. The truth, that he was an unwilling participant in a CIA drug experiment, remained hidden for over 2 decades, a testament to the program's ruthless secrecy. The official end of MKUltra came in 1973. Facing growing scrutiny from Congress, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all files destroyed. It was a bonfire of secrets, a deliberate attempt to erase one of the darkest chapters. The order was almost completely successful. Clandestine research, human experimentation, ethical violations. However, a clerical error saved some evidence. A box of financial records was misfiled. That mistake let investigators piece together the truth. Church Committee Report Cover, 1975. The revelation sent shockwaves through the public. The idea their government ran mind control experiments without consent was a profound betrayal. Use of prostitutes to lure men to safe houses. Dosing of patients in mental institutions. Secret funding of university research. No Manchurian candidate. No programmable assassin. Failed to create a truth serum. A trail of shattered lives. Individuals left with permanent psychological damage. The legacy is deep institutional mistrust. It confirmed worst fears about unchecked government power. How could an agency made to protect turn its weapons on its people? New executive orders, congressional oversight committees. How many other secrets remained buried? Full scope and victims' identities likely never known. The shadows were deep and kept their secrets. Today, MKUltra is a chilling cautionary tale. Fear of an external enemy can lead a nation to betray its values. The search for a weapon to control the mind revealed a deeper vulnerability. Secrecy can corrupt, with a terrible price. The project was over, but the knowledge and ethical lines did not vanish. The scars remained, a permanent mark on the nation's psyche and a reminder of the darkness when accountability is abandoned. While some at the CIA were trying to control the mind, others were focused on a different target: what the mind consumed. They understood a fundamental truth of power. If you can control what people read, hear, and see, you can control what they think. And if you can control what they think, you can shape the destiny of nations without firing a single shot. This was the guiding principle behind another of the CIA's most audacious covert operations, a program to manipulate the media at home and abroad. It was called Operation Mockingbird. The operation's origins lie in the early days of the Cold War. The CIA was engaged in a global battle for hearts and minds against the Soviet Union. Soviet propaganda was sophisticated and pervasive. To counter it, the agency decided it needed its own propaganda machine. But it had to be secret. It had to appear organic. The goal was not to create an American version of Pravda. It was to subtly influence the most respected and trusted news organizations in the world. The CIA did not want to own the microphone. It wanted to whisper into it, letting its message be carried by voices the public already believed. The strategy was elegant in its simplicity and breathtaking in its scope. The agency began to secretly recruit journalists and editors from prominent media outlets, some for patriotic reasons, others as paid assets. These individuals were not just low-level reporters. Influential columnists, foreign correspondents, executives at major newspapers, magazines, and broadcast networks. They became the CIA's hidden assets inside the world's information ecosystem. Through these assets, the CIA could plant favorable stories, spread disinformation, gather intelligence, and suppress damaging revelations. The mechanics of Operation Mockingbird were a masterclass in clandestine influence. When the CIA wanted a particular narrative, it would not start with a major American newspaper. That would be too risky, too easy to trace. Instead, the agency would use its foreign assets. A story would be written by a CIA-friendly journalist in Rome. A think tank funded by the agency in London would publish a report. This initial story would be picked up by an American foreign correspondent, often cooperating with the agency. The story would then appear in a respected U.S. newspaper. Once published domestically, the narrative gained a powerful stamp of legitimacy. From there, it would be cited by politicians, discussed on television, and referenced by other journalists, all unaware of its true origin. Like a virus, the CIA's manufactured story would replicate through the press until it was accepted as fact. The puppet master remained completely hidden from view, its strings invisible to the audience. The influence was not just about planting stories, it was also about killing them. Journalists who were assets could be directed to ignore certain events or to frame them in a specific way. If a reporter stumbled upon a sensitive covert operation, a quiet word from a friendly editor could be enough to kill the story. A direct warning from a contact at the agency could do the same. This created a distorted reality for the American public. The news was not a reflection of the world as it was. It was a curated version, carefully managed to serve the interests of the intelligence community. The watchdog had been muzzled. The full extent of Operation Mockingbird was exposed alongside MKUltra by the Church Committee in 1975. Relationships with dozens of journalists and media organizations were uncovered. Secret funding reached magazines, news services, even books. The public was outraged. The CIA publicly stated it would no longer maintain paid relationships with accredited journalists. But the seeds of doubt had been sown. How could the public ever fully trust the news again? In 1951, the nation of Iran made a bold move. Its parliament voted to nationalize the country's oil industry. Prime Minister Mohammad Mossad led that vote. For decades, Iranian oil had been controlled by a single British company, the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. That company is today known as BP. The terms were deeply unfavorable to Iran. Britain reaped the vast majority of the profits. Mossad became a symbol of Iranian nationalism, a hero to his people. His move put him on a collision course with two of the world's most powerful empires. Great Britain was furious. The loss of Iranian oil crippled its post-war economy. It imposed a punishing embargo and sent warships to blockade Iran's coast. Mossad refused to back down. The British turned to the United States. Initially, Truman hesitated, but when Dwight D. Eisenhower became president in 1953, the calculus changed. The Cold War was intensifying. The British argued Mossadeg's government, though not communist, was unstable. A power vacuum the Soviets would exploit. Fear grew Iran could fall behind the Iron Curtain, and its oil into Soviet hands. The Dulles brothers took the lead. Allen Dulles, director of the CIA, John Foster Dulles, Secretary of State. both staunch anti-communists. They saw Iran not as an oil dispute but as a Cold War battleground. The decision was made. Mossad had to be removed. The CIA was tasked with planning and executing the coup. The operation was given a code name, Operation Ajax. It was the first major peacetime covert action by the CIA to overthrow a foreign government. It would not be the last. It became the blueprint for dozens of similar interventions around the world. The agency, created to gather intelligence, was now in the business of toppling governments. A dark precedent was about to be set in the streets of Tehran. The architect of Operation Ajax was a veteran CIA officer named Kermit Roosevelt Jr. He was the grandson of President Theodore Roosevelt, a name that carried immense weight. He arrived in Tehran in the summer of 1953 with a suitcase full of cash and a detailed plan. The plan was not to use American soldiers, but to manipulate Iranian society from within. Roosevelt and his team would use propaganda, bribery, staged violence to turn the Iranian people, the military, the political class, against their own prime minister. They would create the illusion of a popular uprising, a civil war that only the return of the Shah could stop. The first phase was massive propaganda, portraying Mossad as corrupt, anti-religious, a secret communist sympathizer. They created fake organizations to denounce him. Roosevelt bribed parliamentarians to turn against the prime minister. He also paid street thugs and gang leaders to stage violent demonstrations. Both sides, funded by the CIA, clashed in the streets, creating chaos and fear. The initial attempt nearly failed. The Shah's decree was discovered. The officer delivering it was arrested. The Shah panicked and fled, first to Baghdad, then to Rome. The coup appeared over. The CIA station chief cabled Washington. Operation is complete failure. But Kermit Roosevelt refused to give up. He decided to double down on the chaos. They spread the false story that Mossad had staged a coup to abolish the monarchy. Using millions, they paid huge crowds to pour into the streets, demanding the Shah's return. They coordinated with key officers loyal to the Shah. On August 19, 1953, units stormed key buildings and fought troops loyal to Mossad. After hours of fighting, the prime minister's house was shelled and he surrendered. The coup was a success. Democracy in Iran was dead. The Shah returned to rule as an absolute monarch for the next 26 years. The consequences of these operations have echoed through the decades, shaping the world in which we now live. The 1953 coup in Iran installed a brutal dictator, the Shah, whose repressive secret police, trained by the CIA, terrorized the population for a quarter of a century. The deep resentment this created ultimately led to the Islamic Revolution of 1979, an event that has defined Middle Eastern politics ever since. The anti-American sentiment that exploded in Iran was not born from nothing. It was a direct result of a secret action that destroyed a nation's democratic hopes. A short-term victory for oil interests and Cold War strategy led to generations of hostility. The revelations of MK-Ultra and Operation Mockingbird inflicted a different kind of wound, one to the very soul of American democracy. They fostered a profound and enduring cynicism about the government and the media. When a nation learns that its own intelligence agency has drugged its citizens and manipulated its free press, trust is shattered. This erosion of trust is not easily repaired. Every official denial, every classified document, every story that seems too convenient is now viewed through a lens of suspicion. The shadows cast by these programs are long, and they have darkened the public's perception of the institutions meant to serve them. These three stories are not ancient history. They are living documents. They are a map of how power can operate when it is removed from the light of public scrutiny. They show us that the line between protecting a nation and subverting its values can be terrifyingly thin. For every operation that has been declassified, we must ask ourselves, how many more remain hidden? The technologies of control and influence have only grown more sophisticated since the days of LSD and paid journalists. Today, information moves at the speed of light, and the ability to shape narratives on a global scale is more powerful than ever. The world is a complex and often confusing place. Events unfold, nations rise and fall, and public opinion shifts like the tides. We seek to understand these changes, to find the reason and logic behind them. But we must always remember that there are forces at play that we do not see. There are agendas being pursued in secret, and narratives being crafted in the dark. The programs of the past have taught us a crucial lesson. What we see is not always what is real. The stage is often set long before the curtain rises. The shadows are long. The files are many. The lessons are clear. The hidden hand still moves among us.